A grasp on technology is important for sure, but it is not a vital challenge. My effort, be a translator. In that 3-degree view, when it was dark, you're hoping that the sun will emerge at that particular point on horizon, and the actors should be placed like that. Maybe as humans, we really don't have the full understanding. To raise a child, you need a village. But it's very difficult, right? That needs training.
Amitabh, welcome to Voice of Artist. This is Mumbai. We are in Mumbai. The year is 2024. Can I request you to close your eyes for me? Please go back to your childhood, the year of your choice. Tell us about the first experience you had with camera or the thought about camera.
If we speak about camera, then I think when I would be in class 3 or at the most class 4, then the first camera that I would have gotten familiar with and I would have actually ended up making would be a pinhole camera. And I still very distinctly remember that we had taken a shoebox and made a pinhole camera out of it. First image that I could see on that membrane was that of a candle, a candle flame. During those days, making that parchment, that membrane, for us would be just taking a normal paper out of our notebook and pouring some coconut oil on it to make it translucent. That's how the rear surface was made at that point of time. Yeah, it was very fascinating, I think, as a child. Even today, when now I engage with children, I most often at times try to, kind of encourage them and motivate them to make their own pinhole cameras so that they get a very tangible, very, very tangible experience of, how an image is constructed, it gets made. But what really pulled me into photography was another very interesting anecdote that happened through my school. So my initial schooling was in this place called Danapur. It's close to Patna. And it is understood to be one of the oldest cantonments in India. Yeah, so I think around pretty much the same year that one was, getting familiar as a child, of course, one gets more and more curious observing things around. So around the same time, there was a traveling science exhibition which was hosted in our school. Imagine that Danapur would be a place which was, back of beyond of anything and everything, right? In that exhibition, there was one exhibit which was, just like very small bottle of a chemical. So I don't know whether you have used it that way, but when we were children, then we had ink pots.
Yes.
And, we had ink pens, right?
Yes, we've used it.
So actually it was an ink pot which had chemical in it. And the property of that chemical was that if we take like a white chart paper and if we apply that chemical on the chart paper with a brush and we let it dry in shade. So after the chemical would have dried on the chart paper, one could take a black and white negative and, put it on the chart paper with rubber bands. After the sandwich of negative and this chemically treated paper was done, we would go and place it in sunlight for, say, about 20 minutes or so. So after that exposure to sunlight of 20 minutes, when you bring it back and when you peel the negative off the paper, you see a positive image on the paper. And that to me was like magic. You know? It's like it's magic. I started to find as to why does this happen.
The physics of it.
Yeah, the chemistry of it.
Chemistry.
So then there were resources around, even then there, that one could find out that, okay, this is silver bromide, this sort of a reaction happens and all that. So after having very partially, very, I would say, superficially read about what is going on in the process, I went to my chemistry sir and I told him that I want to make silver bromide. because I had heard, I mean, I had read it that this whole thing happens about silver bromide. So my teacher, he was very kind. So he said, "ठीक है, make silver bromide." So after the school hours would get over, I got on 2 days, I got small window to make silver bromide with my lab in charge. Those visuals are still very clear to my head. So, when silver bromide forms, it coagulates, right? It's like paneer, literally powdery paneer.
Yeah.
So you shake it in the beaker, and you can see it forming, precipitating. And then it starts with white, and then it starts to get dull, and then it becomes almost deep brown. So on day one, I was very kind of, how do you say, very confused. क्या ये हो क्या रहा है? फिर गया वापस, went home, tried to read some more. On day two, tried the same thing again. And so it wouldn't be as soluble as a liquid which I had seen in that ink pot.
Right.
And it was not something that you could pick a brush and apply it.
Right.
It was all powdery and like that. And then on day two, it struck me then that I'm doing this experiment in daylight, I mean in presence of light. And the fact is that since this material itself is light sensitive, so as soon as it gets formed, it starts to interact with light and it starts to change its characteristic. Then one realization which dawned upon me was that I cannot do it in a complete darkness, because we were handling dangerous chemicals, so on and so forth. And I think I was in no position to kind of ask people ke chalo ab isko andhere mein karte hain, because so that chapter somehow got over there. But that curiosity to rather than curiosity, I would say fascination to understand how images are formed, fortunately for me, was seeded very early in my childhood. Although I would have never ever imagined that one day it will become my profession. So from there, then of course there were cameras around. Because I could not make silver bromide, then very soon I got into processing of black and white negatives.
Okay.
Home processing. उसमें भी शुरू में बहुत hit and trial किया, बहुत कचरा हुआ. But I think by the time I was in class 9 or 10, I could get a fair degree of hold on processing. So yeah, so that has been my fascination with the mysterious world of images getting formed.
Precisely to do that, to encourage people to find fascination around them, to build that curiosity, to empower them and find that ecosystem which nurtures that curiosity, is why we created this platform called Voice of Artist. So welcome to Voice of Artist, Amitabh. Thank you for sharing this fascinating story about how the cinematographer in you was nurtured by you and by your ecosystem directly or indirectly. From that, by being curious about how the images are processed, by understanding the chemistry, the physics, the overall science of it, and then using that tool to bring out creativity in the world. How has that journey been from then to today as a cinematographer?
Frankly, I don't think I am yet on the journey. And why I say this is that so far, most of the work that I have done as a cinematographer has been a service, which means that a fairly large framework of that creativity is already in place. And then one engages with that framework and then tries to place it somewhere, extend it somewhere, push it somewhere, define it somewhere within the given framework. So, frankly speaking, I now try to recount some of the greatest work that some of the best minds, in the world may have gone about and done. I feel I have not yet been fortunate enough to be able to take that path. As it so happens that once you are working on a commissioned assignment, your boundaries are somewhere defined. My effort so far within the framework has been to try and get as much an in-depth understanding of where does that creative come from, what could possibly be the intent of that creative to come in place, and then me as a visualizer, how could I be a translator between intent, expression to a visual communication. That has been my effort all along. And in that effort, whatever is the scope of liberty that one can get as a creative mind is what I have tried to do so far. The framework of limitation is not just the creative, but the framework of limitation is also time and resources and so many things. So therefore, then for me as a cinematographer, the effort remains to be able to do justice to my understanding of the creative within the given framework. And if there is anything which I may have managed to do which could qualify as being creative, I always call it a miracle, because that moment or that visual or that entity comes into existence not because people are trying to do things, but because it kind of just comes in place.
So many people coming together, planning for everything, ensuring all the contingencies, and then your frame translates that collective effort to move something in the audience. And this process is what you're calling miracle.
Maybe partially in a way, yes. Because, yes, getting that shot in place itself is a miracle. But to me, that's a miracle more of the logistic nature.
Right.
And I may still not kind of put it into a creative miracle. Creative miracle that I am referring to is a net experience or a net realization which is possibly far larger than the sum total of all these components that have gone in. इसका मैं एक आपको illustration, एक example से अगर मैं बताऊं, तो होता यह है when we are shooting, if there is any particular shot, especially अगर मैं ड्रामा की बात करूं, अगर मैं फिक्शन की बात करूं, तो कोई भी एक शॉट होता है तो उसके हम बहुत सारे टेक्स लेते हैं, maybe 3 takes, 5 takes, 7 takes, it depends, right? ऐसा हो सकता है कि उन 7 टेक्स में से किसी एक टेक में कोई बात हो जिसको शायद हम किसी डेफिनेशन में या किसी तरीके से बांध न पाए. मतलब आपको ये टेक क्यों अच्छा लग रहा है, उसका शायद आपके पास कोई आंसर ना हो, बट उस पर्टिकुलर टेक में कोई एक ऐसा मिरेकल मोमेंट होगा, कोई एक ऐसी बात होगी that may make that particular take stand out from the rest of it. So while everything is identical, there is one take which may shine out. And if that take shines out, then that's what I would call as a creative miracle. Oftentimes, when we talk about, say, drama, we talk about live action, people may, for obvious reasons, may ascribe that to the performance by an actor or timing, and I really respect that. But if there is a particular visual, if there is a particular,
frame which captures that performance.
Yeah, it may or may not have an actor. It could be just wind blowing through the trees.
If I may, the visual that's coming to my mind is from your film The Good Road, where there's this scene where the little girl is sitting and sun is setting.
Yeah.
To me, as an audience, it felt like a miracle. And I have to mention to the audience that became, of you and the director Gyan Korea, the film which represented India to Oscars.
Yeah.
But that frame, and there are so many frames which you have created in that film. Yeah. To me, as an audience, it felt like this is miracle. Yeah. So you must have felt that on the other side.
So sun setting by the child, frankly, is not so much of a miracle, frankly.
Okay.
But in the same film, there is a miracle. Right? And if you allow me, then I'll narrate the story to you, because the story will take long time to share with you. So, अगर आपने गुड रोड देखा है, उसका एक ओपनिंग सीक्वेंस है, और उसके ओपनिंग सीक्वेंस में एक जीप है, जीप के पीछे सनराइज हो रहा है, और जीप के आगे ये फैमिली है. Right? That shot is a miracle. That shot is a miracle because the camera has to roll even before the sun appears. The camera had rolled even before the sun appeared on the horizon. That particular shot was taken with like a 500 mm sort of a zoom.
Okay.
Which means that your field of view was maybe 2 degrees. Right? The camera was placed about half a kilometer away from the jeep.
Okay. Because
for me to get images in proportion, the jeep in proportion, the sun in proportion, the human forms in proportion, the camera was at least 300-500 meters away in a field.
Right.
So in that 3-degree view, where to place the jeep, where will the sun rise from, and where should the actors be placed, needed to be premeditated even when it was dark. So you are placing the camera in the dark, you are placing the jeep in the dark, you are hoping that the sun will emerge at that particular point on horizon, and the actors should be placed like that. So and the thing is, the sun will rise at one particular point, once ever.
Yeah.
Because tomorrow it will shift, right? Every day the sun will shift, which means that the event which I am trying to capture on film, on camera, will occur only once in this universe.
How profound is that?
Even today, if I measure everything and I place my camera and I mark everything, tomorrow the sun will not rise from there. Firstly. Secondly, tomorrow the sun may not rise exactly in the same way that it has risen today. It can be cloudy, it can be foggy, it can be so many other factors. So, as I said, that the camera had rolled even when the sun was not on the horizon. And when the sun came out, and it came out where it had to come out, that is the moment I realized that this is miracle. And every decision that was taken was completely intuitive, completely on a gut. So to me, that's maybe a little more miracle realization, Then the son by the child, because in the son by the child, the son was already there. I could move my camera. In fact, I did. I could move my camera here and there to get the composition in place. But here, it was all being, pre-visualized, executed on ground in darkness.
Unless you're a scientist who studies astronomy, for you, the way you said, it will be intuition, it will be hope, it will be your best possible scenario with the knowledge that you have.
Yes, please.
And it is so liberating to hear in today's time when everything is data-driven and precision and marked and stamps and everything. You're saying miracles do happen. How were you or how was the set prepared to welcome that miracle? Was it your preparedness? Was it your openness? Was it your hope? What was it that allowed that miracle to come?
I think very difficult to say, because what happens is in the film making space, you sort of give in. Frankly speaking, one is not too much in a space of seeking manifestations and all. No, you just surrender. You just give in.
What you just said, you made it sound very simple, but it's not. Just surrender and just give in.
Yeah. As creative people, as visualizers, as artists, at least for me, when such a event occurs, I realize that it's far beyond any of the logistic, any of the efforts, any of the thoughts, processes, methods that one has. Of course, all this is necessary.
Sure.
But this necessity still does not compel that magic moment, that unseen, to come and find its life in the frame. So
you gave us an example of the magic moment happening in The Good Road, which I would say it is a brilliant film, but not mainstream. You also have done enough and more projects which are what we call mainstream or commercial. Chillar Party, Khosla Ka Ghosla, Panchayat, while not being completely mainstream, having a soul, a slice to life angle, a relatability angle. Have you experienced that magic moment in these projects also?
That's again a long story.
Please, it'll be a pleasure to hear.
Yeah. So that story is for a series that's yet to be, broadcast. For that, we were shooting in Kodaikanal. As per the creative, as per the writing, there would be one scene which is between a cop, a hardened cop, a cop's son, and a professor. And the scene is very, very delicate scene. These two fathers are trying to negotiate for the child. So where to stage this scene, we and all our teams, we were doing a recce. We are trying to find ke chalo isko yahan karke dekhte hain. And in Kodaikanal, we went to one vantage point, which was like a cafeteria on edge of a cliff. And they have a balcony, and across the balcony you could see ranges and hills and valley, and one thought was that, okay, let's stage this scene here, as we do during our recce stages. We place assistants for artists. We try to do a whole run of the scene. We try to do short breakdowns. Yahan se ye karenge, wahan se wo karenge, all that. So the thing is, why I'm getting into this detail is, the thing is that particular location was practically on the verge where we actually had put in an effort to see कि अच्छा ये shot यहाँ से होगा, ये यहाँ से होगा, उसको उधर से कर लेंगे.
Right.
वहाँ तक हम process कर चुके थे उस particular venue को, because it seemed like signature Kodaikanal, extremely picturesque. So after all this discussion, roughly spending hour or so, when we were walking away from the venue, there is a spark that happened in my head. And then the director, very close, long time friend, very sensitive human being. I told him, I'm not able to see the emotion of the scene because the emotion of the scene is very delicate.
Right.
It's very delicate. So I'm not able to see the scene happening here, although it may be
Looks.
very, very picturesque. He said, okay, so what is running in your head? So I said, see, what is running in my head is the lake, the water body. And on the water body, there is one like a half dead tree. And then there are, early morning mist that floats, on the water body. And the sun, because even about the scene, the sun was not yet up. So there's no sunrise as yet. So it's pre-sunrise. So all you see is stillness of the water, hanging mist. And I see the whole scene happening like that. And there is a tree. And so I said, "Theek hai, chalo, we'll see." So we went around, we went down to the lake. We started to find a spot for that. We found a spot for that. And this is January.
Oh.
This is in the month of January. And again went through this whole process of aisa hoga, vaisa hoga, long shot idhar se hoga. The inspector will come from here, whatever. Fine. Now, after this decision was taken, naturally the team goes back. They start drafting schedule.
Yeah.
Between our recce day and eventual shoot day, there was definitely a gap of 1 week or 8 days or 9 days. Right?
Sure.
January. Right. So no morning mist. Out of question. Right? So much so that, for example, if we had to shoot this on 7th of January, me and my team went on 6th of January, early in the morning, like 5 in the morning, sat by the lake and waiting for the mist to happen, waiting for the mist to happen, waiting for the mist to happen. Did not happen. No mist, clear lake, clear atmosphere, everything is clear. But we had to shoot the next day.
Right.
So there was no reaction time. So later during the day, when me and the director and the team, when we were jamming, we said, chalo koi baat nahi hai. We'll shoot it itself because, in no way it is not adding to the emotion of the scene. So no, never mind. 7th January, we land there. And the frame was exactly what I had verbally described it to the director up there 10 days ago. Still lake, mist all around, just possibly the picture that was somehow relayed to me at that moment on that particular day. So we were kind of completely surprised by that. We took a shot, but then tragedy happened. And then things, tragedy in this, not tragedy in that sense, but the story has another end to it. So, so for some reasons, we could not shoot that day.
But you got
we could not shoot the scene that day.
Right.
But we saw.
You saw, yeah.
We not only saw, at least in one shot, we had that visual. We still have that visual in one shot. But we could not shoot that scene for whatever reason. So it was so decided that we will come and shoot the scene the next day. And I told the team that tomorrow, this is not going to happen. And naturally, the next day, the mist was not there.
It's not there.
We had to shoot what we were granted that day. But yeah, 10 days ahead on some completely disjointed point, if there is a visual that kind of enters our system and a schedule is drawn, and as per the call sheet of the schedule, that set is kept ready for you. If we can't shoot that, then that's our problem. That's not the problem of the set dresser, right? because in the call sheet it's not given for the next day.
Yeah.
So these are some of experiences that completely defy one's rationale, one's logic.
With the limited understanding that we have is why the rationale gets defied. We can't see
Yes.
the big picture or the whole picture is what you're saying.
Conditioning also, I guess, because what happens is that understanding will always, kind of keep fluctuating. I mean, it is easy to say that it will build up, but it need not necessarily build up, because oftentimes we also surrender certain understandings.
Right.
But the thing is that a lot of our conditioning factors around us, they keep on nudging us to, start gravitating towards a particular anticipation or belief. So I feel that conditioning is also a factor. I mean, for a director to say, "Chodna, yahi pe kar lete hain." So that is where, as I said, that it is the whole environment which somewhere is instrumental in facilitating what we wish to do.
Amitabh, you're saying this after having a formal education, and you were one of the 9 people who came out of FTII in your batch as a trained cinematographer at that time. And then you have almost 30 plus years of experience being a professional cinematographer. What you're describing is out of your experience, wisdom, openness, at the same time, the belief that you have the technical knowledge to be able to accept this X factor or the magic moment that we are talking about. What would you say to the young, aspiring cinematographers? Because it is important that there is a technical, functional base, then a creative mindset, and correct me if I'm wrong, and then being open. Is this the order that you would encourage people to think in?
I feel that there may not be a simplistic sort of guideline or simplistic sort of a way forward to this, because it's a very complex question that we have right now in front of us. One thing that I would definitely vouch for, and which I would definitely encourage everyone, including myself, to believe in completely, is the fact that technique is nothing. It is the least of the challenges. As we move further and further, technology will keep making things simpler and simpler for us to achieve or to execute. I mean, cameras of this size is unthinkable, where our learning should have started using motion picture, right?
Yeah.
And even before that, there will be cameras that will be half the size of this room.
Yeah.
Right. So what I'm saying is that a grasp on technology or technique is important for sure, but it is not a vital challenge, because that challenge gets addressed by enough number of factors, including technology. And if somebody is working in a team, like how as filmmakers we almost always work as a team. If somebody is working as a team, then there is always a human support system around you, which will ensure that that a particular quality of result is achieved. I feel that collectively as an industry, we have definitely come to that position whereby there are human systems and technology-enabled systems which are ensuring that a particular quality, a caliber, is achieved. So for me, that's not a vital challenge, and definitely not a vital challenge which should ever appear to be a hurdle or a handicap for anybody. Because all the friends here who are dabbling in technology of image making, They will agree with me that possibly every 3 months or 6 months technology will change.
Yeah.
And when it changes, you have to again kind of learn, unlearn, relearn, whatever. So that's not to me such a vital challenge. That's not to me something that anybody should ever feel disheartened about or discouraged about. That leaves with greater challenges.
Right.
And the greater challenges are definitely about training oneself. If me or if somebody, considers cinematography as, say, an art form, an effort of expression that in any way uh, is related to art, then I feel that any understanding or any expression of art cannot be devoid of the acceptance of divinity, because I think art and divinity are kind of necessary to each other. To give you an example, I feel it will be difficult to talk about our movements or any movement on earth because without acknowledging gravity. So even if you want to fly, you will need to acknowledge gravity.
Right.
The understanding of gravity enables us to fly. If we don't understand that, we may not be able to fly. So I feel in a very similar way, art or any expression of art, then I feel I have to acknowledge divinity. Because without acknowledging divinity, I may not be able to do justice to what I wish to do using that form. But it's very difficult, right, to acknowledge divinity. That needs training. The word that you had used, acceptance, to me that's trainable. I think each human is born with the ability to acknowledge that.
How can one be trained to acknowledge, accept, and let divinity flow through them in their chosen art form?
I feel silence is a very big process. It could start from the body being made silent, because that's the easiest thing to do to my mind. I mean, I know a lot of
People struggle even with that.
a lot of people may find it very difficult to sit still.
Especially in Bombay with overwhelming level of life energy that people, the artists or aspiring artists are surrounded by.
But I feel that, and I think, especially in India, we have been so blessed because we have enormous, not only enormous understanding and knowledge about that, we have well laid out scientific processes to that, which in a simplified word can be said as a yoga or
Pranayama.
sadhana or whatever, right? So we actually have, over a period of thousands of years, a completely, user manual how to get closer to divinity. But I also respect the fact that have chosen to train ourselves in a different way. So that's a reality that is right staring in face of us, and we have to respect that. We have to appreciate that. But if somebody wants to be an artist, then I feel chasing silence to begin with can be a good doorway that could lead us further into that particular arena. That has been my journey, and because I am familiar with that, that's why I may be able to speak about it. I may not be able to speak about other journeys, how other artists would have come to their realization. For me, silence works. Yeah.
One is the silence outside, and the other and more important is the silence within, in the head. while an artist appreciates and accepts divinity, for the young ones or the new ones, aspiring filmmakers, cinematographers, or artists in general, to even reach a stage where you are ready to accept that divinity, because your body is an instrument which needs to be ready to accept. Is there a step zero to that step one? Is it being aware of what the realities and practicalities of the world around you is? And how do you find that silence and balance while living the way you are expected and supposed to live in today's fast paced world and competitive world?
Very difficult to comment, because I think there may not be any generalized overstatements that could cover. I'll come back to the Japanese proverb: to raise a child, you need a village. Individually, we may have certain wishes and aspirations and desires, but end of the day, we are part of a larger reality. Then somehow facilitates how we eventually shape up or grow up. So, in fact, the other day, with one of my writer colleagues, we were having a discussion about, there's this very famous book about Tuesdays with Morrie. And one of the quotes that to my mind right now comes very contextual is that, you just don't exist as a wave. You exist in a larger ocean.
Right.
So I think even an artist may not exist as a wave. The artist needs to exist in a larger ocean.
You have, in your own way, tried to do that with Cinevidya, your initiative to train young minds, students to become future filmmakers. In our own humble way, we are trying to do that with Voice of Artist, where art for art's sake should be nurtured and encouraged and strengthened. And the philosophy that we go by is, it may sound very bold or maybe even ideal, art above chart. To say that art should be for art's sake, and if you focus on the art, it will draw charts which will help you survive in this world which you are a part of. What do you have to say for that?
I would possibly say that, art for the sake of larger good, or art for the sake of humanity,
Right.
art for the sake of society, because I feel that we are actually waves who are part of a larger ocean.
Yeah.
Because completely hypothetically speaking, if my expression of art somewhere is extremely self-serving, possibly for 1,000 centuries, hypothetically it could be the perfect piece of art. But if it somehow is not, if is bringing any meaning to the ocean, then I mean, I respect that, but my view is that it needs to bring meaning to the ocean.
Absolutely. In fact, when we say art for art's sake, it's just in the context of putting it above chart. We were visualizing Voice of Artist as a story, and if it were a story, its logline would be that Voice of Artist is a rebel collective that must unlock the artist within everyone to create art above chart, a universal global movement, an universal artistic movement to build a positive tomorrow. We could not make ourselves say just for the society or country or world. We said a positive tomorrow.
Yeah.
Instead of saying a better tomorrow, because better is always in a comparison. Yeah. So when we say positive tomorrow, do you think it's a nudge enough? And how can this thought, because ecosystem and environment is something which we are continuously going back to, it's very important. How can an individual thought become a collective thought? What can one do to nurture the ecosystem around them while the ecosystem nurtures them?
I feel that for me as an artist, I need to have a clarity about my own core, what it is about that is binding me to this, to this relationship with the divinity or whatever we may speak about in that context. So one is that for me, if I can talk about myself, for most of my practicalities of the given world. It is to have clarity on that core and to have that strength and stamina to be holding on to that core for as long as I can. So that is one part of it. The other part of it, very personal, very much from my own journey, is to shed. So what I have observed is that if my dependence on certain factors amplifies to a certain extent whereby my thought processes may get confined or affected by a material reality or by a physical reality, then I would very seriously try to figure out how can I shed the physical reality to still stay closer to what the core, what the core pursuits are about.
So lesser externalization of the core value system?
No, to put it very simply, like, I mean, if I can tell you about my own practices, I eat one meal a day. I don't have a vehicle. I don't, I don't have a home loan to pay. So the thing is that when I started realizing that possibly these factors are somehow building up and adding up to a value which is a sizable force enough to pull me away from that core, then I would rather shed them.
Reduce distractions of the real world is what you're telling people.
Liabilities, I mean.
Liabilities, distractions. Yeah. It comes down to the core commitment, clarity, curiosity. It's a lot of C's that we are, in a way, and channelizing the divine energy.
Yeah. So that's where I feel that, if somebody considers that one has kind of devoted one's efforts, energies, life in a way. I mean, I am no one to say that in that sense, but yeah, one has to build their own processes, and for me this has worked. So
if I may, you actually brought back the thought that we have grown up with in India. Art is devotion. You are actually bringing that back and saying that it is very much possible. No, it is a necessity to treat art as a devotion even in today's time, however fast or all the complexities of the new age world.
Yes, like I said, it's actually a manifestation. While moving on earth, even if I want to fly, I have to acknowledge gravity.
Yeah.
So while trying to express something in an artistic form, and if I claim that I'm doing it in an artistic form, then I have to acknowledge divinity.
I'm very curious here to ask, because acknowledging divinity and doing it with humans and non-living things, I understand. You gave us a beautiful example of your encounter with the divinity in Kodaikanal. Where do animals come in picture? Because in your lot of films and scenes, you have had animals also.
Yeah. No, this is, again, I mean, I will here try to relate very funny anecdotes which has happened to me multiple times.
Okay.
And because it has happened to me multiple times, then we are like how we are trained as rational people. Because it starts to happen multiple times, you start to try and understand कि ये हो क्यों रहा है, right? So, like for example, right now we are in a 3-camera setup, right? But most of the time that I have worked, especially early in my career, because we were shooting film and 35mm and resources were like really expensive, we would shoot single camera. And that was a norm for most of the projects earlier in India here. कई मरतबा, मतलब I would say maybe almost 10 times or more than 10 times. What would happen is, for example, if we are shooting in a sport arena, in a ground, in a big ground, in a stadium. So what happens as part of our processes is that, we set up a frame, right? Or whenever we set up a frame, there is something called center of frame. जहाँ पे वो क्रॉस हेयर जाकर के मीट करता है. तो फुटबॉल ग्राउंड है, स्टेडियम है, बड़ा सा मैदान है. Like I was shooting Chillar Party, बड़ा सा मैदान है. There are 100-200 people of the crew and others who are around. So if I set up a frame of an empty मैदान, कि यहाँ पे अभी एक्शन होगा, लोग आएंगे, जो भी होगा। आपने एक ऐसा एक बड़े से मैदान का एक एम्प्टी फ्रेम लगा दिया, आपने कैमरा लगा दिया, with 100% guarantee, if there is a stray dog, and this I am telling you with 100% guarantee,
Okay.
if there is a stray dog, the dog will not go to the food stall, the dog will not go to any of these 100 people standing on the periphery of the frame. The dog will find its way to the center of the frame.
Wow.
आप उसको कितना भी कोशिश कर लीजिए, वो इधर से हिलेगा नहीं। आप उसको खाना दे के बुला लीजिए, वो उधर से हिलेगा नहीं। वो अपने आप वो सेंटर ऑफ फ्रेम पहुंच जाएगा। अब ये जब 20-25 बार ऐसा मेरे लाइफ में हुआ तो मैं सोचने लगा कि ऐसा होता क्यों है। And that is where I realized that to that center of frame there are so many energies that are concentrating. Actor is thinking मुझे चल के ऐसा जाना है, somebody is thinking, so camera person, me sitting behind the camera, director is thinking like that. So there are so many people who have channelized their focus into that space. And we all know that dogs are so hyper intuitive about everything
And receptive.
About everything. So that is where I could understand that this fellow animal, this friend, this colleague of mine is able to actually sense that focus point.
Wow.
Of where everybody is having their intents placed, right? तो वो एक ऐसा startling realization था after repeated incidents that I could sense that because as human animals our own abilities are very limited, right?
Yeah. It's just Vibgyor that we can see and experience.
Yeah. So that is where I could very clearly, for my own sake, I could have this understanding that maybe as humans, we really don't have the full understanding or the full view. What the dog is able to sense, we may try to refer to it as center of frame. अरे उसको हटाओ, उधर किधर बीच में आ गया, you know. but the fact is that the dog is able to feel presence of that energy there, which through our rational systems of knowledge and understanding, we try to interpret or define it in some other sort of a way. So that is where my learning of working with animals or working around animals has grown.
This is incredible because what you're saying is they can see what we can't see, but we are creating, which means humans with our limited, not potential, but limited ability to see and perceive, we are doing much more than what we can see.
Yeah.
And that makes me curious. It might sound very esoteric to a lot of people, but I still want to ask you and take this opportunity to take your views on it. Technology and camera specifically, has it played a role for humans to expand their vision? By which I mean, I've come across some people who have said, in camera, if you point it in a darkness, you capture some shapes which are unexplainable in our rational sense. And a lot of people say they are energy manifestations. It could be a formation or a representation of soul that we see. There are this conversation also that camera captures something which we can't see, but because the capabilities are different, of course, it sees more than we can see by human eyes.
Technically, the point is correct in a sense that in our eyes, our lens is fixed. We have a fixed focal length. But in these cameras, you can change your lens. So when you change your lens, naturally, the camera is able to show you what our eye can't see, because biologically, we have a fixed focal length. So that way, the camera is expanding our ability to see is definitely true. But whether it is able to see these kind of shapes and forms, energy forms, these cameras which are working within the visual spectrum, I may not agree to that. They still are not able to see too well.
What is an ideal camera for you as a cinematographer? The best available and the ideal.
See, I feel camera is combination of 2-3 different components, right? So one, of course, is the optics. One is where the images are formed and stored. And one is how the images get translated to be shared or broadcast or exhibited. I feel the optics of it had already evolved how and beyond even 10 years ago or 15 years ago. So when it comes to optics, I think we had made progress which was leaps and bounds. The kind of optics that we would get even 10, 15 years ago would be completely outstanding, stunning optics. When we come to where the images are formed and stored, there I feel that the progress that we had made with chemical imaging, what we call as negative or emulsion,
Right.
is infinitely capable. It is one of the most capable surfaces on which I would, recommend, or I would feel that the images need to be formed and captured. When we come to its exhibition and its transmission and broadcast, that is where I feel that the digital revolution is fantastic, because to be able to physically, optically carry an image from person to person, from place to place,
The amplification level is huge.
is practically an impossible sort of a task, right? And to do it simultaneously is completely impossible, so as to say. So, and we already had a technology whereby the images that were captured on emulsion would get digitized and will then move into the digital realm. And when they move into the digital realm, then the other post processes, whether it is editing or post production or transmission, because many of the post processes were extremely cumbersome on the material, on the negative, which become very, very handy and easy on digital. So I feel an imaging ecosystem whereby we as a collective world have extremely evolved optics, an image formation and capture surface which is chemical, and the post ecosystem which is digital. To me, I think that's, so as to say, a nearly perfect world that I would imagine as a cinematographer. See, I mean, so far that we have discussed, and we have discussed as photography or cinematography as an art form. At the same time, I would definitely bring this thought in front, is that end of the day, it is also about communication and expression. And when we talk about communication and expression, then naturally it involves many parties, more than two parties, right? So if I can share with you some of my early experiences when I was still a hobby photographer, and क्या है schools में, colleges में, naturally there is no access to a motion picture camera. In fact, like I had said, that even in the wildest of my dreams while growing up, I had never ever imagined कि मैं किसी दिन सिनेमोग्राफी करूँगा. तो जैसा हम लोगों के बचपन में उस दौर में था कि बेसिकली एक वो हॉबी वाला स्टिल कैमरा रहता था, एंड देन यू जस्ट गो अबाउट क्लिकिंग हियर एंड देयर. यूजुअली जैसे शुरू होता है कि शुरू के काफी सारे जो फोटोज हैं वो फूलों के और पत्तियों के, एंड यू गो लाइक दैट एंड ऑल दैट. तो वो भी मैंने बहुत किया. फिर ग्रेजुअली you grow your interest, and gradually start expressing and expanding into different forms. तो मेरे अर्ली हॉबी में एक साइजेबल दौर था वेयर, चूंकि मैं बनारस में था, एंड बनारस इज सो वाइब्रेंट, फुल ऑफ लाइफ. सो एक दौर था जिसमें वन वुड ट्राई टू कैप्चर लाइफ ऑफ ह्यूमंस. कैप्चरिंग लाइफ ऑफ ह्यूमंस में उस समय जो हमारा एक थोड़ा सा कह लीजिए चलन थी, तो वन वुड बी यूजिंग अ टेली लेंस और जूम लेंस, सो दैट वन इज वेरी अनऑब्स्ट्रूसिव in a way of observing life. Although there were phenomenal photographers, I mean, I would say global creative photographers who were doing the same thing using wide lenses and extra wide lenses.
Like?
like Mr. Raghu Rai, one of my ideals when it comes to that form of photography. One of the giants of photography whom I really, really look up to, I admire, I mean, like a demigod. This is Mr. Henry Cartier-Bresson. And if you see his work, you may realize that a lot of it is from a very ordinary, normal sort of a gear.
Right.
बट तब तक मतलब फ्रैंकली मुझे उतना कॉन्फिडेंस या वो वैसा प्रैक्टिस तब तक मुझे नहीं था. तो नेचुरली वन वुड बी यूजिंग अ जूम टू शूट स्टिल लाइफ ऑफ पीपल, राइट. तो वहाँ पे वही मोर देन वंस जो एक रियलाइजेशन या जो एक अवेयरनेस हुई, जो एक जागृति आई जिसको अगर मैं बोलूं, तो उसमें ये होता था और अक्सर होता था. और जो लोग भी स्टिल फोटोग्राफी करते होंगे वो मेरी इस बात से बिल्कुल वाकिफ होंगे. मान लीजिए कि कोई एक्टिविटी चल रही है, आपने किसी एक इंसान को अपना सब्जेक्ट चूज कर लिया कि अरे ये जो पर्सन है उसको मैं कैप्चर करूंगा, और वो जो पर्सन है वो शायद आपके कॉम्पोजिशन या आपके फ्रेम के हिसाब से, आपके विश के हिसाब से उस समय नहीं है. वो कहीं और घुमा हुआ है, वह कहीं और देख रहा है, और आप चाहते हैं कि वो एक पर्टिकुलर टर्न ले या एक पर्टिकुलर तरह से देखे या एक पर्टिकुलर पोजीशन ले आपके कॉम्पोजिशन के लिए. तो ये मेरा रिपीटेड एक्सपीरियंस रहा है कि 100-200 फुट दूर से भी आप व्यू फाइंडर में देखते हुए बिना एक शब्द बोले उस सब्जेक्ट को, उस इंसान को एक्चुअली टर्न करा देते हो. वो इंसान एग्जैक्टली वो फेसिंग, वो पोजीशन, वो एक्सप्रेशन, वो पॉस्चर ले लेता है जिसकी आप कामना कर रहे होते हो. यहां पे प्रॉब्लम यह है कि जब वो इंसान वो पोस्चर लेता है, बिकॉज इट्स अ फ्लीटिंग मोमेंट, इट्स अ फ्रैक्शन ऑफ अ सेकेंड, वहां पे आपको रेडी रहना पड़ता है ट्रिगर दबाने के लिए, क्योंकि उस इंसान ने तो अपना काम कर दिया जो इच्छा आपने जाहिर की थी, बिना बोले हुए, बिना सुने हुए, बिना उसको देखे हुए. वो आप वो आपकी प्रेजेंस जान ही नहीं रहा है, आप तो क्राउड में छुपे हुए हो. वो इंसान आपकी प्रेजेंस नहीं जान रहा है, आप उसकी प्रेजेंस जान रहे हो, लेकिन वो आपकी प्रेजेंस नहीं जान रहे. लेकिन ये सब गैप्स, सो एज टू से कम्युनिकेशन गैप्स ऑफ प्रेजेंट अंडरस्टैंडिंग के बाद भी कोई तो एक ऐसी कम्युनिकेशन है जो हो जाती है, और जैसा आप चाहते हो वैसा वो इंसान एक मोमेंट के लिए कर देता है, और वहां पे आपको रेडी होना होता है कि मुझे वो मोमेंट जो है अपने स्टिल फोटोग्राफ में, कैमरे में कैप्चर कर लेना चाहिए. ये एक्सपीरियंस सिर्फ इंसानों के साथ नहीं है मेरा, ये एक्सपीरियंस मेरा जानवरों के साथ है. कि जानवर आपसे दूर, मतलब उसकी पीठ आपकी तरफ है, वो आपसे अवे जा रहा है, और वो एक बहुत अच्छी कॉम्पोजिशन है. कोई जरूरी नहीं है कि हर कॉम्पोजिशन में जानवर आपकी तरफ आ रहा हो. वो जानवर आपसे दूर जा रहा है और आपको लगता है कि अब उसे घूम करके इधर देखना चाहिए, और वो घूम करके उधर देखेगा. मेरी गारंटी है देखेगा. आप रेडी हो या नहीं रेडी हो, आपके इंट्रिंसिक कॉम्पोजिशनल विश को वो जानवर दे देगा, लेकिन उस मोमेंट में हमें रेडी रहना पड़ता है. उसके लिए हमें ट्रेनिंग की जरूरत पड़ती है, उसके लिए मुझे साइलेंस की जरूरत पड़ती है, और लोगों को और पड़ सकती है. बट मैं ये कहना चाहता हूं कि इट्स ट्रेनेबल. डेफिनेटली देयर इज अ डिवाइन एलिमेंट टू इट, बट वी हैव टू मेक एन एफर्ट, एंड दैट एफर्ट आई एम रेफरिंग टू अगेन एंड अगेन एज ट्रेनिंग. रिसेंटली, इन हाल फिलहाल के सालों में क्या हुआ है, बिकॉज नेचुरली आई mingle with a lot of youngsters, with a lot of students, with a lot of aspiring photographers, and nowadays thankfully with the access to mobile imaging technology, mobile cameras, almost anybody and everybody is equipped to take photographs. Aspiring photographers में जो at least जो 1000, 2000, 5000 लोग जिनसे भी मैं मिला हूँ, youngsters और aspiring professionals, I have realized that they are not very comfortable in shooting humans. Almost always you will see their work or you'll see their portfolio, which is not about human faces. It's about objects, it's about landscape, it's about scenery, it may be about animals. But I sense that there is a discomfort in a whole lot of aspiring photographers and cinematographers to actually shoot humans. And I would, for whatever reason, encourage people to get comfortable with shooting humans.
It might be a reflection of a larger behavioral pattern which is shaping up with the generation. But this discomfort needs to go away. And then how can that go away, according to you?
I guess every person will need to find their own answers. I mean, why am I uncomfortable shooting a human? That they have to find their own answers.
It's a very profound pattern that you have discovered.
Yeah. It's disturbing to me. I mean, we would shoot, when we were hobbyists, we would go around shoot humans.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, one would shoot flowers and petals and landscapes
Sure.
and this and that. That's fine. But we would not be shying away from shooting humans. In my own gamut of realizations, of course, of what I have come across, I have realized that there is a very distinct discomfort in aspiring photographers and cinematographers to be shooting humans. Even if they go out and shoot street life, it will be not about a human moment. It will be about a row of shops or some mannequin or some display or some architecture. It will not be a Henri Cartier-Bresson moment.
According to you, is it reflecting in the direction that overall cinematography or extending to filmmaking is going towards?
Relating back to the discussion that we started with, as soon as we come into an organized space, whereby the scripts are in place, whereby the creative is in place, so naturally the photographer and cinematographer will end up servicing what's written. But the problem is that then when we approach the medium from that side, then it is all, so as to say, manufactured. So there's an actor acting like, or there's a performer performing like.
Right.
Right now, what I'm referring to is actually a slice of life, is what humanity is about. So that is where I feel there is a noticeable discomfort.
And it is, I would say it is a wake-up call, because photographs are like a mirror to society and civilization. It's like a memory book, a museum, which you can see and get to know how the world has been when you were not there. Isn't it a responsibility of photographers and cinematographers, in a way, if they take it upon themselves, to capture the world as it is?
I would definitely believe, and I would definitely say so. The reason why I feel it is disturbing to me is because I think collectively as a society, collectively as an ocean, we have driven ourselves in a space whereby we are not comfortable with anyone and everyone who is not like us, or not like a projection that we wish to project to be either acceptable or admissible. So the fact is that we are not really looking into humans and their faces and their expressions and their state of mind and spirit, because to me somewhere we have shrunk our bandwidth of accepting people as who they are, unless and until they are put into a role and then they are made to act a particular,
A colleague, a wife, a daughter, a student, a teacher.
Yeah. So unless and until somebody is put into a role, we feel discomfort in confronting that, and we feel discomfort in just being neutral observers. So I think that position of being a neutral observer, through my observations of all the work that comes in front of me, I have realized that maybe collectively we have driven into that position.
It's a much larger conversation to dwell deeper into this. But for today, to wrap this conversation and take a cue from what we just discussed, I would like to try and request you to channelize your child self who was playing around with pinhole camera. What would that kid tell the kids today?
Experiment. I think as humans, we are here to experiment.
Experimentation with each breath is what we hope that people take away from this message. Any last message that you want to give to our audience on Voice of Artist?
To begin with, I think personally is to accept and to be aware that art and divinity are, they are like manifestations of same things. And then if that realization dwells, then to find their own methods and practices to be able to serve that, because as artists we are at service.
Thank you for leaving us with such a profound yet liberating message, I would say, because if we perform the duty that we are here to perform, it will be liberating in one way or the other. Thank you so much, Amitabh, for coming to Voice of Artist. It's our pleasure.